I've been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old. My parents put me in a program, a free program. When I was about 17 years old, my brother, who also did martial arts with me, he was starting in an after-school program. And he came up to me and was like, "Hey, I need instructors for my after-school program. Would you like to teach for me?" It's funny because now that I've become a little bit more successful, I actually get calls from people who are school owners who just call me up and they're like, "Hey, I hear you're with Figure Dojo. I hear you're super successful. What are you doing to do that? And, is it worth it?" And all this kind of stuff, right? So, I've probably spoken to 10, 15 school owners who've called me and had that conversation. And I can always tell the ones that are going to make it and be good at it and the ones that aren't.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 7 Figure Secrets podcast. This is Jennifer Waters. I'm here with my co-host and dad, Tommy Siegler, and our special guest today, Mr. Brandon Kemmer. Brandon, thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about being here. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who don't know Brandon is one of our clients inside of 7 Figure Dojo. He's actually an amazing martial artist, business owner, obviously, and he's been writing a book. He's written a book in the company of giants, how mentors help forge your path to success. Really excited to talk to you about all the things, your martial arts journey, the business, and your book. So again, welcome on board, and maybe just share a little bit about how you got started in this whole martial arts journey.
For sure, yeah. Again, thanks for having me on. I've been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old. My parents put me in a program, a free program at a church that's down the street called Rocky Peak Church. And my instructor, Mr. Cox, was teaching there with a couple other instructors. And, that's how we got started. We were there for about 6 months, and then, the program was growing really big. And so Mr. Cox decided to branch out, and he started his own school after that. And, I was training. I got my black belt, my junior black belt at 10 years old. And, I almost got my second degree, but then my parents pulled me out of martial arts training. And I did other things. I did baseball, volleyball, musical theater. I did a whole bunch of other stuff, And then when I was about 17 years old, my brother, who also did martial arts with me, he was starting in an after-school program. And he came up to me and was like, "Hey, I need instructors for my after-school program. Would you like to teach for me?" And I'm like, "I haven't done martial arts since I was 12. I have no idea what I would be doing. I've never taught anybody anything before. Let me think about it," right? You know what I mean? And so he's very persuasive. So he kept at it. But just come by and just kind of come to a class and see what you think. And we'll go from there, And yeah, so I went and he threw me into the fires right away and had me demonstrate a form. And I was like, "I don't know any forms. I don't know what you're talking about." So I didn't even know what I did, but it was pretty terrible. And he was like, "Why did you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, I don't know. That's all I knew." But I loved it. I was like, "This is awesome. This is so fun," right? I want to get better at this again. I missed this. And, and so then I just started teaching with him, and the rest, eventually he sold me the school in 2008, because he started as an after school, but then he started his own school in 2003. And then in 2008, he decided to do something totally different. So he sold me the school in 2008, and I've been running it since then.
Wow. Yeah. That's, I think a lot of instructors can sympathize with the whole being thrown out there by your instructor at some point.
Oh,
yeah. A lot of people, I know that happened with Dad. I don't really remember. I was just helping on the mats when I was a little kid.
Yes.
Go work with that kid over there. They need help. Yeah. Any big moment? Those were obviously pretty big moments for you. Any big moment for you when it came to going, okay, I'm now a school owner. What direction do you go? Did you have any thoughts around that, or what happened when you took on that ownership role?
Yeah, I thought it would be so easy. I was like, that sounds easy. I get to be a school owner now, and I get to do martial arts all the time. So I had a job, and I quit my job, and I was like, "All right, cool, let's do this," And it was in 2008, so that's right when the recession hit. And so immediately, and I didn't know anything about business. So we lost, we only had about 100 students. And then I think we got down to 45 students or something like that. Right away, within a couple months. Right. And so then I had to start working part-time again. But, I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I had zero business experience at all. And I just thought it would be, I'd just come in and teach my classes and leave. And that's what I did. I went in, I taught my classes and left. And I just figured people would come and people would tell, word of mouth kind of thing. People would come in, but that wasn't happening, right? And especially during the recession, it was much harder to get anybody to come in. And so, yeah, and so I quickly realized like this is a little harder than I thought it would be. And so then I started working a full-time job and doing the martial arts school on top of that for a few years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That sounded a little bit like my journey.
Yeah.
Working a full-time job to support my family, and then waiting 17 years for my kid to grow up so she could take over the head. So yeah, pretty good. So you got this book in the Company of Giants, How Mentors Help Forge Your Path to Success. Sounds exciting. Tell us a little bit about it. What inspired you to write it? And what are some of the key takeaways in your opinion?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I never, thought I would write a book ever. It was like, that's for other people, smarter than me that can write books and stuff like that. I'm not much of a writer or anything like that. Right. But, it was actually one of my main mentors in my life, my instructor, Mr. Mark Cox. And he wrote a book a couple years ago. It's called Beyond the Mat. It's like life lessons that he's learned through his martial arts training. And he wrote a book, and he went through this whole book writing experience, and like he signed up for like a coaching program. And so he told me like, you know what, you should write a book. And I was like, well, what would I write a book about? And he's like, I don't know, let's start thinking about it. And my dad died a couple years ago, and he said, well, maybe you could put some stuff in there about your dad and what kind of an influence he was on your life. And at the time, I just kind of brushed it off, and I was like, okay, like I don't really want to do that, But going through and like seeing how the people in my life, like Mr. Cox and like you and like Jennifer, has really like changed the course of my entire business and my entire life, like over the last, even like just couple years, has really made me decide like, I do have things to say. I do have like a message to put out there that, hey, sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need other people to tell us what to do, and I think so often we just kind of like, I can figure it out on my own. Let me do this and let me do that. And that's how I was operating my business for years and to no success. Right. And so, Mr. Cox was actually my first business mentor because like I said, I was struggling. I was working full time. I was teaching, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And my brother left, and he wasn't part of the business at all after he sold it to me. And so I was kind of at my wit's end. And I'm like, I need help. And so the only person I knew to go to was Mr. Cox, who I hadn't seen since I was 12 years old. Right.
Wow.
And at the time I was like 24. So I'm like, well, let me call Mr. Cox. And my brother and him were not really on good terms. And so I wasn't sure how that conversation would go, But I'm like, let's just see what happens. And, and so I call him up, and he's like, sup, and I'm like, what are you calling me for? Right? Like, I haven't talked to you forever. What's going on? And I'm like, hey, I have a struggling martial arts school. Would you come and help me out? Give me some advice. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And so he was like, yeah, I'll do that. Right. I'm like, cool, right? So he came and met me in my school and sat down with me in my office, and he's like, here are the main 5 profit centers. You have, your new students, you have your upgrades, you have your, your retail. And he starts breaking down these things like, you need this, you need to do this, you need to do this. So he gave me like a 5-step plan on like something, right? And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so then I started trying to implement those things that he was telling me to do. And then I would go back to him and say, hey, I did those things. Like, what else can I do? Right. And so he started off as like kind of getting the ball rolling. Right. So I was like, okay, cool. Now I'm actually like doing some marketing. I'm actually getting some students. I'm actually like moving in the right direction. And so, like I said, I mean, that was a huge business mentor in my life, where it was like, okay, cool. Like that was so impactful to me. And if I didn't have that, I would have absolutely had to close the school down, right? And even, meeting you guys, like I had a kind of more generic business coach, and a couple of years ago, before I was with you guys, and he kind of helped me out with some of my, coming up with a business plan and core values and kind of things like that. But then I kind of reached a I was with him for about a year, but it wasn't specific to martial arts. So he could have really helped me with like growing like a martial arts school, but he really helped me kind of like organize things a little bit better. But then when I met you guys, you helped completely catapult me into a whole new level of success that I'd never experienced before. And so that's what kind of really started making me think, I could write a book about this and kind of show that journey and show others like how, sometimes it's really important to just kind of reach out and go to people who have more experience than you, who have done it before, who've been there. And, so that's kind of like the broad strokes of why the book is taking shape.
So give me one thing that you were really fired up about that's in the book. Something you thought about.
Yeah.
If you to tell somebody something that's in the book that would make them want to buy the book.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different things, right? What the idea of the book is that the message is hey, you need to get out there and get some mentors to help you out, right? But then another part of the book is about the principles, some of the principles that I've learned, right? Because there's like the day-to-day tasks, like, hey, you need to set up these 5 properties, you need to do that, so you do that, you need to do that, right? And so there's like kind of like the day-to-day, the task-oriented kind of things, but some of it is just conceptual, right? And so there's certain concepts that I put in the book that I've learned from mentors, such as like you guys and Mr. Cox and another one of my instructors, Sergio Machado, who have really helped me with my mindset on having a mindset of success, right? And so, for example, one of the chapters is weathering the storm, right? And so you can have this idea of in a martial arts in a physical way, like in jiu-jitsu, you do jiu-jitsu, right? And so in jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of weathering storms there, right? Sometimes you're on the bottom, the person's crushing you, and you're like, I want to tap so bad. I just want to get out of this situation because this is my whole, it feels like I'm about to die, right? But sometimes in life, it's the same way, right? You're in debt. You're not, your family's struggling. You're struggling. Your relationships are starting to kind of get some friction there because, like you're just not, doing the things that you're supposed to be doing and stuff. And so sometimes, like my dad died. That's part of that weathering the storm thing where it's like, man, like, how do you go through loss and still kind of, move forward in business, right? When your emotional state is just kind of in disarray, right? And so that's one of the principles in the book that I really enjoyed writing that section where I kind of dive deep into my emotional journey, losing my dad, that kind of lack of success where it's like, you're just kind of feeling like you're just, man, like I just want to tap out right now, and it's like how to instead of tapping out, just kind of weathering that storm and just kind of keep pushing forward until it starts happening.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, you've mentioned, Mr. Cox, your dad being a mentor, obviously coming on board with us, your previous coach that you had before coming on board with us. What was different for you maybe with receiving some mentorship from myself, from my dad, that just made it a little bit different and impactful for your business and impactful for your personal life?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I was teaching a class last night I was like a guest instructor somewhere, right? And I was teaching a sparring class. And after the sparring class, I was supposed to teach this other class afterwards, but only one person showed up, right? And so he had already taken the sparring class. And then he was like, hey, I was like, so what do you want to do today? Got like a little private session here. He's like, can you just kind of go over some strategies and some sparring stuff with me, right? And so I start doing that, right? I started going over some strategies and we're just kind of working some stuff, right? And he's like, this is so good. Like, I love the information that you're giving me. He's like, it's funny. He's like, you hear it all the time from your instructors and you hear kind of the same kind of messages, but sometimes when you just get the different perspective from somebody else, it's like completely mind blowing to where it's like, oh, okay. That's what they mean when they say that, you know what I mean? And so sometimes you just kind of like need the right person that just kind of comes along to just kind of just change your mindset on the way that things are, right? And so when you guys came around, like I started watching some of your YouTube videos and immediately I just started kind of connecting with you, right? I just started just connecting with your message. Whereas with a lot of other martial arts coaches and things like that I've seen. Like I went to the Maya show, just the a martial arts convention show in Vegas. But, that I know that you guys went to a lot, but I went to that for many years, like maybe 10 years or so, right? And for whatever reason, I mean, they have really good information, and a lot of the stuff that they do, you do, right? You don't do all of it. You do. I feel like yours is a little bit more modern and more in line with some other just good business practices. But a lot of the information could be very similar, right? But you hear a lot of it, but I wasn't implementing it. I wasn't necessarily doing a lot of it. I kind of like pick and choose the things that I wanted. Like, okay, I'll like cherry pick this thing over here, and I'll take this thing over here. I don't like this thing over here that they're doing. Like, for example, programs, right? Like for the longest time, I was like very adamant about, I'm not doing any programs because I don't like them, right? Like I just want to do, just kind of a month-to-month kind of thing, right? Like somebody signs up kind of like a gym membership, right? And then you hear things the way that it's phrased and the way it starts in different ways. But then when you talk about it, I'm like, when I'm training for a black belt, if I'm on a month-to-month kind of basis, what kind of commitment is that, right? There's no commitment there, right? But if I want to get my black belt, it's going to take me 4 years or something like that. So I'm going to sign up and I'm going to get that black belt. And if I give myself an out, and if I give myself like, okay, like I'm just going to kind of keep it month to month, I'm kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? And so it's like, same thing with coaching. When I signed up with you, I signed up for 4 months. If I was on a month-to-month thing, a month one, if it's not working, I might be like, okay, cool, like I'm done, right? But when I signed up with you, I signed up for 4 months, and it's like, okay, I'm going to give this a 4-month try, and I'm going to go all in on this and just kind of see what happens, right? Like with you, it was like within the first 2 weeks, I was already like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what's happening. This is insane, right? Like, it's already like completely changing the school, right? I was completely overwhelmed with leads coming in and everything. And I'm like, I have to completely change everything that I'm doing right now, or it's all going to fall apart, right? But, and so there's just like things that you were saying, and you were saying it in a way that just connected with me, right? And so it made me want to put things into practice. And I think you're also very good at making it personal and not broad, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it's broad, it's like, okay, cool. Like you kind of take and leave it, right? Like here's some things to do, right? Like you have like this and that, right? Rather than like, you're kind of diving in, like, tell me about like what you're doing for your sales process. Tell me what you're doing for your, for this. Tell me what you're doing for that. And then I would tell you, and then you'd be like, okay, well, instead of doing that, do this, right? Where some of the other things are a little bit more of like, here's a bunch of stuff now, kind of take it or leave it kind of situation, right? Where it's more of like, I just got to just follow the script, right? And so that's kind of like what I see as the main difference is I just connected with you in a very fast way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go back to the mentoring thing. What do you think are some good qualities that make it an effective mentor?
That's good. Yeah. I think something that you guys and Mr. Cox and, my dad, like that there's certain people that just can tell you what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. And there's a lot of people out there that you just want to make people feel good, right? But you actually know that, hey, if I just make you feel good, you're not going to do anything, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? If I just pump it up your ego, right? But you guys are very good at just saying like, hey, this is the problem and here's the solution for you, right? This is what you need to hear. You need to do this, right? And so a good mentor doesn't, shy away from difficult conversations, right? They can have those difficult conversations and they can call you out when you need to be called out. For example, like my business coach, Danny, his last name, I think is Holstein, something like that, right? But right before you guys, right? He was key in a mind shift for me where I was referred to him by a friend of mine who I really like this friend. His name is Dave Angfer, right? And he said, hey, I'm doing this business coaching, man. You should jump on board. Like it's really done a lot of things for me, right? So I was like, okay, cool, man. Right. So I signed up for the mentorship training with Danny. But in the back of my head, I'm kind of doing it for Dave. I'm not doing it for myself. Right. I'm like, I like Dave a lot. So I want to do this for Dave, like I want to show him like, oh, okay, cool, man. I'm on your side. I want to do this too. Right. So I'm kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So while I'm doing the coaching meetings and stuff like that, after, maybe 5 or 6, maybe probably about 5 months or so into the training, Danny's a super nice guy, but there was a point where he realized I was not doing the work, right?
Yeah.
I was showing up late to the meetings. I was missing meetings. I was rescheduling meetings, and so one time I remember I was in my car and he says, hey man, I just need to talk to you about something. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I feel like you're not all in. I feel like you're not really listening to what I'm saying, and that, this isn't really working for you. So either fire me or actually do what I'm telling you to do, right? Because I don't really want to be working with you anymore if you're not going to do what I'm telling you to do, right? And I'm like, interesting, right? And so at the time, I don't even remember what I said, but I remember hanging up the phone and being like, man, he is so right. I'm not listening. I'm not actually doing what he's telling me to do. I'm just going through the motions, and yeah, I've got a business coach, right? So I'm doing it, right? But after that conversation, I made it a point to make sure I showed up to meetings on time with him. I prepared for the meeting beforehand. I implemented the things that he told me to implement, and that completely changed my whole viewpoint on coaching in general. And so I think that I had to go through that in order to be successful with you guys also.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I would say, those were qualities that you already had coming into coaching, because, one of the things I noticed right away is that you were implementing. Like,
Yeah.
I get the call. As soon as I get off the call, the next time we were on a call together, you had done the things that I had said to do. And so that's one of the reasons why you've had this crazy growth journey, getting close to hitting a 7-figure run rate now. I mean, like,
Ching.
like it's a crazy growth journey over the last 3.5 years, I think, something like that, right?
I think it's 2001. So what is that?
That's
2.5?
21. Yeah, 21.
Or 22. No, I was with you at 22.
22. Okay, so 2.5 years then. So yeah, I mean, for somebody who's, whether that's martial arts mentorship or coaching, or just they're listening to this and they're like, okay, this is starting to make a lot of sense. I want to move forward. I want to, look at getting help with the things that I want to accomplish in my life. Like, what are practical steps that someone needs to do for themselves before they go and start implementing coaching so they can actually take advantage of it?
Yeah, it's funny because now that I've become a little bit more successful, I actually get calls from people who are school owners who just call me up and they're like, hey, like I hear you're with Figure Dojo, like I hear you're super successful. Like, what are you doing to do that? And, like, is it worth it? And all this kind of stuff, right? So, I mean, I've probably spoken to 10, 15 school owners who called me and had that conversation, right? And I can always tell the ones that are going to make it and be good at it and the ones that aren't, right? Like, for example, Clay Pearson started to kill it. He's starting to do things. He's starting to do some cool stuff. He's signing up a lot more people and stuff like that because he literally flew from, where is he at? He's in
Georgia
too, right? Yeah. So he's in Georgia, right?
He's in our state.
What's that?
He's in our state.
He's in your state.
You're doing it with us.
And he reached out to me and he called me and said, hey man, like, what are you doing? Right. And he's actually part of our American Tansudo affiliation with Mr. Cox. And he's a Mr. Cox black belt too. And so he called me up and he's like, hey man, like, I see you're doing really big things. Like, what's going on? And so he actually flew out to California. I think he was doing some other things too, but he specifically wanted to meet with me. And so we had this, conversation, and I could tell like he was driven and he was hungry and he was desperate, right? And as I'm talking to him, I can see his wheels spinning and like, oh man, I got to do that, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and oh yeah, like this is awesome, right? And so every single thing that I was telling him, he was like, this is awesome, right? I have to do this, right? And so then he signed up with you guys and he's implementing, he's doing it. He shows up to the calls, he shows up to the meetings. He put out an awesome video about his new, for his onboarding process and things like that. And he's doing it, right?
Yeah.
I talked to so many other school owners though, who are like, I could never do that, right? Who have that going into it, right? Like they say, what about this? What about that? What about this? And I started telling them some of the processes, and you can tell that they're apprehensive, and they're like, I don't know, like it's uncomfortable, like I don't know if I could do that, and that maybe that works for you, and that wouldn't work in my area, and they have all the excuses, right? One of my chapters in my books is no excuses, right? And it's like, if you want the mentorship to work, you have to trust. You have to trust that other people know better than you and that they've been there before. And if you do what they say, it's going to work, right? And there's so many of these school owners that I can already tell right off the bat. And I try to, and I work on just that frame of mind, right? And I tell them, I'm like, hey, like, it's not going to work for you if you're like that. You know, if you got that mindset going into it, this isn't going to work for you, and I wouldn't even do it, right?
Yeah.
Because your mindset's not there. You want to do it your way still.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've heard that. I don't even know how many times.
Yeah.
I think I said that a few times myself back in the day. I'm not. When she was learning all this, she was learning all this stuff, and she'd come back, Dad, we need to do this. I'm not doing that. and then finally it all clicked for me, and then we started, and that's when we started to grow a whole lot. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's, you've been there, being humble enough. I think that's a huge part of it. Like if you can have that humility, right? And eager. You mentioned like both of those, desperate, eager, whatever. And I think that, I first started going in this, I had a mentor too, Keith Scott, a huge mentor in my life, and, helped us. Mr. Sealers and my husband and allowed us to really start breaking down a lot of these concepts. And I learned from other people as well. But I think that being able to go, okay, I don't know anything, but I will trust in the process, or saying, well, we've been doing it this way, but I'll trust in the process. And anytime that we've had so many mentors, we still have mentorship of our own. Like we're never without mentors, firm believer in that. But that's always been a key to being successful, is being able to trust. But I think where so many people get stuck is that they get burned by one or two people, and then they go, well, everybody's like that. And the reality is that I've been there too. My dad has been there too. People are people, and we're all, fallen human beings, right? Like we all have flaws. We all have these issues, and not every mentor that you have is going to be great. But I think you can definitely tell, just like the Bible says, you can tell by the fruits that a person puts out, right? So it's the same thing with your mentors. Like, are they doing what you want to do? Or have they done what you want to do now? And I think that's been huge. But without humility, I mean, that was a big piece of it for you too, Dad. Like, I mean,
yeah,
because you've been doing it for years and years.
And having to stay, you kind of swallow your pride and go, I've done it. I'm going to do it because it's not working the way I'm doing it. So I got to do something, got to figure it out.
Yeah. I think it's also in the martial arts where, for whatever reason, there's a lot of ego in there in general, right?
That's part of
I have to.
Huge.
I wanted to do it my way, and like, I can make this work and all this stuff. So I think getting over yourself and is huge, and trusting in the process is one of the chapters of my book too. It's trust the process, right? And so I think that I think that's another reason. And business owners in general have a little bit of, you got to have a little bit of ego to be a business owner, right? And so and so ego is not all bad, but it can also get in your way when you're having to listen to people.
Right. You're right. So you're talking about martial arts. So how has your training influenced your approach to business and the entrepreneurship aspect?
It's a great question. I started jiu-jitsu a couple of years ago, right? Under Sergio Machado. He's not from the Machado family, but he's I don't know if you know Checkmat. You know Checkmat?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Checkmat black belt.
I know of them.
Yeah.
Very good artists.
And, I've been in martial arts forever. I've been Krav Maga and karate and things. And I always wanted to do jiu-jitsu, and I just never did because I didn't have the time or the money or anything like that to do it, right? And so a couple of years ago in 2020, I started doing jiu-jitsu. And just like I said, where you have certain people in your lives, like those mentors, or where you have those certain people in your lives where you just kind of connect with. And immediately I connected with this guy. And one of the things I love about him is that he gives us these life lessons along the way as we're going. And it's a lot of mindset training. A lot of the chapters in my book are directly related to the things that I've learned from him, crushing me, and also making sure that he's, giving me these awesome, like, kind of perspective. He's an Army Ranger, and he's also an active duty police officer. I think he's a SWAT too, but he's a hardcore individual, right? Who's seen a lot of things. And so having somebody like that in my life where it's like, I thought I was tough. I thought I was mentally strong, but I was realizing as I was doing jiu-jitsu that I was much weaker than I thought I was, right? I was much weaker than I thought I was. And it was much easier for me to give up on myself and give up than I thought I was, right? You know what I mean? And so as I've been training with the surgery, he has a lot of certain principles that he has in his training, and it's really translated so well into my personal life and into the way that I'm running my business and things like that, right? To where it's just, completely just kind of evolved me as a person in a lot of areas, right? And so I'm so thankful to have people like that, right? It's where I've already brought up multiple people. Jason Flame is another one who I know that who's already on the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Awesome podcast. An amazing individual who was also another one of my business mentors. Quick story about him. He was also a coach for Maya for years. And he is part of our also American Tatsudo Alliance organization. And he put it out there to all the school owners, hey, like, if anybody wants help in their business, I'm more than happy to help. Let's meet in Moore Park, at a pizza place in Moore Park, and let's just, kind of chat, and I'll go over some business tips, right? And so it was supposed to be a weekly thing. So I started showing up every week to this business meeting with him. And he's not, getting any money for it or anything like that, but we're not paying him, but we're showing up, right? So a couple of the first meetings, there's a few people there. Within the first month or so, maybe even a month and a half, nobody's showing up but me, right?
Wow.
So he's taking his time, like an hour and a half of his day, to come and meet just with me at this pizza place to help me with my school. And a lot of the things that I did before I met you guys with like implementing programs and things like that were coming from him. Yeah. And he kind of started that, like kind of jump started it right before I was with you guys. And so I'm so grateful for him too, to have that selflessness. And he absolutely didn't have to do that, and just to meet one-on-one with somebody, like that, like when there's not really anything in it for you besides that satisfaction of making somebody else successful was just awesome. You know what I mean? So he's been another huge mentor and, catalyst for some of the results that I've been seeing now.
Yeah. If you had to pick a lesson from the mentors in your life, and I know there's a lot, so yeah. Maybe it's hard to narrow down, but if you had to pick a lesson that you've learned from a mentor that's had huge impact on you, what do you think that would be?
It's a hard question.
You probably put 2 or 3 of them together. And
I know.
A whole nother thing. Well, I learned this one from this one, and I combined it with that.
This is your second book.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to say, Dave Kovar, right? I'm sure you guys know Dave Kovar. Yeah. Right. And, I went through a lot of his, what is his online training academy called?
It's Satori, right?
Satori Academy. Yeah. And so I went through some of that training, and I've done a couple in-person instructor training things with him as well. I mean, there's so many things that I could point to, but one of the things that he has is this constant and never-ending improvement idea, which I'm sure comes from somewhere else, but calls it the CANI acronym, right? The constant and never-ending improvement. Another way that you guys I know put it is always learning, I think that you say, or maybe something like that, right? always learning, right? And so that's the shorter way to say it. And so I think there was a time in my life where I wasn't learning. Like there was, after Travis left the school, I had no teacher. I had no martial arts instructor. I had no one helping me learn how to be a better teacher. I had nobody helping me in business, and I had nobody helping me improve my martial arts. Right. And so that is a very lonely place to be. And it's a place where you're not motivated. It's hard to show up to class and keep teaching when you don't feel like you're growing yourself in anywhere, right? And so that just simple idea of like, okay, how am I improving myself? How am I improving my business? How am I improving these certain things? Whatever activities I'm involved in, how am I improving myself as a parent, right? Whatever the thing is, like there has to be some sort of goal and some sort of growth that I'm trying to go through, because that's where I start having that confidence, and then I start having that belief in myself, and I start being motivated, and I'm excited, and then there's that buzz all around you and all the people around you, and they feel it that you're passionate, right? And so I think that that's just a huge thing. And so once I, started getting instructors again, I started like a guy named Conrad Ercolano was one of the first instructors I sought out after my brother left the school, and so I started training from him. I started training from a guy named Dennis Ichikawa, and I went back to Mr. Cox again and started training from him. And, now, Sergio Machado. So getting that instruction again in martial arts just completely changed my teaching in the school too, right? And I started implementing the things that I'm being taught, and, it just was a completely different experience, right? And so I think that would be that constant improvement, constant never-ending improvement, right? To where,
Yeah.
Another way that it's said is, what is it? It's that the enemy of excellence is good enough, right? Where it's like,
Right.
if I say, hey, okay, I'm good now, then I'm going to stop getting good, and I'm actually going to start dropping, right? Yeah. We seek perfection in what we're doing, but we know we'll never get there. And I think it's also a good kind of thing too.
Yeah.
So good stuff. For someone just starting out in their career, or maybe even for like some of your friends that called you about, what you're doing, how can they find and connect with mentors in their field?
Yeah.
And let me put this in there too. I say in any walk of life, because one of my mentors is John Maxwell, and he has nothing to do with the martial arts, but it's all about leadership. So for everybody listening, you don't want to always stay in the field of martial arts and look for people, because the world is wide and people have wisdom that we in the martial arts industry don't have, and you need to be pulling from that. What are some of the things that what are your thoughts?
One of the things that I love about you guys too is that you bring in a lot of those type of ideas that are outside of the martial arts field, right? Just like you said, like with John Maxwell, and a lot of the things that you talk about are not the standard cookie cutter things that I've heard from, being in the martial arts industry for a while now. And you bring in different perspectives, and you evolve, and you change, and you improve, just like I was talking about earlier. And so seeing that, that just evolution in you guys, I think is huge. And so if someone's like going out to seek someone, I think that, just like you said, starting off with just reading is huge. I didn't like to read at all, right? That was like the last thing that I wanted to do is read a book, right? Or even listen to a book. I didn't want to listen or read the book, right? But now I try to read like 1 to 2 books a month, right? And it usually turns out to be about 1 book a month, right? And so some of the books I've read have completely changed my life as well. Like the 4-Hour Work Week was like just this huge, just I can't believe what I just read, and how have I missed out on some of the things that he's talking about, right? And so I think that, like you said with John Maxwell, you don't know him, right?
I don't know him personally. I've never met him in person, ever shook his hand, but
you could still consider him a mentor, right?
Oh, look, mentors, most people, I mean, I'm talking about a man who's written 80-something books.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
and I got tons of them in that cabinet back then. But when being in his organization, I'm a coach or trainer and speaker from that organization. And being in that organization has helped me with my mindset and the things that I do, the books that I read, not just his, but other books. The principles apply in all areas of your life. And so you don't have to know someone. I don't know Dan Martell. He wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. He's a huge influence, and he's an amazing individual. But I plan on meeting him one day.
Yeah, you can have these mentors who you don't even know because you feel like you know them by reading their words, right? And listening to their podcasts and listening to the words that they have to say, right? Attending their events and stuff like that, right? Where it's, those type of people can be huge. And so if there isn't anybody in your immediate circle, and open up and go other places, right? Like what with you guys, right? Like if you're in a martial arts business, like you should be with the 7-Figure Dojo because they're going to help you, right? As long as you listen and trust the process, they're going to help you, right? And so I think that it's just so important to have those things and to have those people in your lives, like sometimes if it's your parents, that's awesome. Sometimes it's not for some people. And sometimes it's just a close friend or a spouse or something like that. Right. And so it's just so important to have that. And if you don't have anybody like in your physical life, then you need to start looking, to podcasting and books and ways to improve in those types of ways, and online training and like organizations like you guys have that are very targeted to your industry that can really take you to the next level.
We've been talking about all the great things about mentorship, but we haven't really gotten into the challenges. As you were being mentored, what were challenges that you faced along the way, whether that was with your mindset or actual, just like, physical challenges, emotional challenges? Like, what were some of the challenges that you faced trying to implement some of these things, and how did those mentors help you get through it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's hard. Yeah, especially at the beginning. Right now, it's more just how it is, right? Like I don't know anything different anymore. It's just how we go, right? And it's just how we do it. At the beginning, though, it's a complete, just almost even like a worldview change. If you're allowing that to take place, it's like a whole different thing that you're just not used to. And so the hardest part is the implementation of what your mentor is telling you to do. Even if you want to do it, right? Even if you desire to change and make the changes that they want, that you're listening to, implementing it is a whole different ballgame. And so, like I said, when I first started with you guys, immediately I started getting like, my phone started ringing off the hook. My appointments were going crazy. I was getting, I would probably have maybe 10 people come into my school per month for you guys. And then after you guys, like right away, like I'm having like 80 appointments of people to come in, and maybe 50, 60 of people showing up a month.
Yeah.
That's a complete overload and something where you're just completely overwhelmed, right? Where you're like, oh my gosh, like what did I just do, right? And so there's that moment where you're like, okay, cool. Like if I'm actually doing these things, I can see how this could be really awesome. And so there's that overcoming that overwhelm that is very hard, right? And so, I mean, if you're not doing it, then you're probably not going to be overwhelmed. But if you're doing it and you're implementing things in the way that they should be done, it should be that growth right away, right? And so once that growth is happening, it's like, okay, how do I maintain this, and how do I make the changes necessary in my business to support this, right? Because some of that structural stuff of the business isn't necessarily there yet, and I have to make that happen on the fly. Whereas I've talked to some other school owners who's like, well, maybe I got to get all of my ducks in order and my structure completely sound first before I start getting leads and start getting people coming in my doors. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? Right? You know what I mean? Right? I'm like
the person who says they need to get in shape before they do martial arts, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, no. You need to start getting people in the door because you're drowning, right? Get people in your door and start changing while you're doing it, right? And so we're never going to be perfect, right? Like I said earlier, we're never going to have a perfect school, right? But we need people to come into the school to actually keep our doors open, right? And so If I wait until I've got a perfect system and perfect everything in place, then, I'm just asking to close my doors, I'm just asking to not be able to actually financially support the school,
That's true. It's kind of like you really don't know how to swim until you have to swim against the current.
Yeah.
It's just to be there. It's easy in a pool. But the first time you get in a river or something like that that's flowing, and you're going, oh my goodness, I'm not where I started. Or in the ocean, in a little tide starts pulling you out, and you don't know how to get back in. I mean, that's kind of scary and dangerous. So what advice would you...
Let me just say something real quick about that. I love that. I love how you use that analogy, because that's exactly how it feels. It feels like if you're doing it, like you feel like you're drowning, you feel like you can't swim. It's totally right. But then you're trying to figure out how to swim on the fly. You know what I mean? Like, all right.
But you're not, but you're able to get in. That's the thing.
Yeah, as long as I can keep my head above water, I'm good.
Yeah.
Doggy paddles.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like when you first learn to grapple, or when the first time somebody choked you, or the first time you got punched in the face really hard, and you went, oh, I don't know if this is from me or not. You got because someone punched you in your face, and you went at them like, I'm gonna get him, and you got beat up worse because they could sit there and go, oh yeah, he's gonna hit me. Oh no, he's way over there.
Exactly.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people about, because this is martial arts stuff, but there's difference in coaching. When we teach people how to do things, we put another element in there that a lot of people don't put in, and it's called leadership. And what would you tell people who are in a coaching program and not getting results out of it, maybe, or they're reluctant or uncertain about stepping into a leadership or an entrepreneurial role? Maybe they want to go out and do another business or something like that. What kind of advice would you give to those individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, I don't think being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is for everyone. Some people, it's just, I just want to kind of check in and check out, or clock in, clock out, and kind of do my thing, right? Because being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. There is no like, I am off now, right? I'm off the clock. There's none of that, right? You're working pretty much all day in some capacity, even if it's just a fraction of your brain capacity, just going into some things that need to still get done, right? You're just kind of always on, right? And so it's kind of a different type of life. And if that's something that you want to do, then that's kind of how I'm wired. And I didn't realize I was wired that way for a very long time, right? I realized that I realized early on that I did not like working for people, right? I don't know if it was my ego or whatever. I just felt like I didn't like the idea of just coming into a job, clocking in, clocking out, and then that's it, right? I just didn't like that. I like the idea of what I put in. The work that I put in, I'll get more results after, right? And so I like that idea of being kind of my own boss and being in control of my own destiny in a sense, right? And so, for people kind of stepping into that leadership role, number one, is it for you? Are you willing to go there and go through the hard work that it takes, right? That you're gonna have to make that decision. The other thing is that if you are willing to do it, then you gotta go all in. You actually have to do it. You have to learn. You have to get mentors. You have to study. You have to learn how to be a leader. And some of the things that I've learned from you guys too is that I was not a very good leader, and I thought I was. Like with my staff and things like that, I would just assume that they would know what they need to be done, that what needs to get done, and I would be frustrated when they wouldn't do things my way. But at the same time, I didn't want to take the time to train them how to do it my way. I would just get mad when they wouldn't do it my way. Right. I'm sure you guys can relate to that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had to learn that, okay, like if they don't know how to do things the way that I want it to get done, that's not their fault. It's not their fault. And I was blaming them for it, right? And instead of blaming them for it, I had to take ownership, like Jocko Willink says, extreme ownership, right? I have to take the ownership and actually like make it put if something's not working in my business on me and not on my employees and my staff and my instructors, if something's going on the mat that I don't like, then okay, like where did I go wrong? First of all, let me figure that out so that I can train them so that doesn't happen again, right? Whatever that thing is, right? And so that has been a huge shift in me too, from you guys also, is that I thought I was leading, I thought I was good at it, but I was terrible at it.
That takes a good bit of self-awareness too to figure that out, right? And a lot of people are lacking in that self-awareness. So good on you for being able to do that. I mean, it's like I mentioned earlier, two and a half years, I think, that we've been working together. There's been a lot of shifts, a lot of changes in your business, your personal growth. I mean, I think when we started working together, your wife was still working, right?
Yeah.
At the time. And so you've officially retired her.
She's retired. We run some Airbnbs also. So now she just has fun doing that. We have one at our house. We have another one in Simi Valley, which is a couple minutes away. So she enjoys just kind of, she homeschools our kids and she runs the Airbnbs now, and she loves it. She was a very good, strong worker, and she was, the most loyal worker that you would ever want. And she had a really hard time leaving her job. But I think she is so much happier now that she doesn't have to do that.
Yeah. So I know that was one of the goals, like when we were kind of starting to chart out goals and things way back then, was like, okay, let's try to get the business up to enough where you could actually do that. And then you hit that goal. And then I remember you talking about wanting to take your family on a big vacation, and you hit that goal and you did. And now you're hitting even bigger goals. And we've had even more in-depth conversations about what the future is, with whatever you're comfortable sharing, but what's kind of ahead for you? Like, what are your goals? What are your aspirations for the future after being and going through mentorship? What is that looking like for you?
Yeah, and it's still that idea of, again, this is Dave Kovar saying happy but never satisfied, right? And so it's that idea of like, I'm really happy with the results that I've made so far, and I'm just ecstatic about it. Like, I can't believe where I started and where I am in such a short period of time. It's just, I was talking to my wife the other day about it. We were just blown away. We're like, I don't understand this. This is just like it doesn't seem real, right? And so it's pretty cool that that's kind of where we're at right now. But then at the same time, I can't allow that feeling of, to make me stagnant and be like, okay, cool, right? So I think this is probably where we're good, and we'll just kind of stay here for a little while, right? It's that idea of like, I love this, but I want to also set up my employees and the people with me that I love working with, like Luke Crosby. I've got a guy named Tom Bloom and David Estrada, right? And, Cam. I want to set them up for success as well. And so it's starting to get to the point to where they start seeing futures here also, and they can start setting up things and plans for their life, and they can start setting visions for themselves on what they can accomplish in martial arts and here at the school. Whereas before it was like, you just knew that, like, okay, I'm going to have an instructor for like 2 years, maybe. They're probably going to be like 16 years old, and they're going to work for 2 years. Then they're going to go off to college, and then I got to find another 16-year-old to teach some classes again. And they're going to teach for 2 years, and then they're gone. And so the turnover for instructors was just assumed because there was no money coming in. And so I could pay very, very little to those people, right? And so as we've been experiencing this growth, they're experiencing the growth too, because they're making more money too. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, I could actually make a career out of this. And this doesn't have to be something that I'm doing on the side until I decide what I want to do with my life.
Right.
And so I think that for me is one of the biggest things. Like, I do want to open up a bigger school and have more, mat space and all of that kind of stuff. But the thing that gets me excited too is setting up my guys for success and helping them reach levels that I never thought I would be able to do as a schooler.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So with all this stuff you have been able to accomplish, tell the viewers what kind of operation you have as far as staff. And something that we've been doing for a long time is we have We have people who work with us who are not physically in the building. We have virtual assistants. And I know that's something that you have, and that's something that I think when, COVID and all hit and we had to pivot and make all kind of moves and made us think a whole lot differently, and everybody was working from home. Even if they were working at a job, they could have went down the street to go. So give us a little insight on that, because I don't think a lot of people realize the importance of being able to have not just a martial arts school, not just a business, but to be able to run that business efficiently with as minimum amount of people as possible, but yet at the same time put out very good products and services.
Absolutely. My team is huge, right? I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I didn't have the pieces in place that I had coming into this, right? Like you said, the virtual assistant, my virtual assistant, her name is Maria, and she is amazing. And I immediately after reading the 4-Hour Work Week, I sought her out, right? I went out and she lives in the Philippines, and it was something like $600-700 for her to work full time for the month, right? And at the time, I'm not making any money. This is right after COVID, like early 2021.
Yeah.
I'm probably making $10,000 a month, but I've got expenses, so I'm pretty much losing money every month. And I have to figure out, okay, can I pay this person $600 and go even more into the hole, right?
Right.
And so that decision was really hard. But at the same time, I'm like, I think this will be, I had to, like you said, that awareness idea. I had to come to terms that I was not good at a lot of things that I was supposed to be doing, right? And I was trying to do all the things. I wasn't having my instructors do anything besides teaching. And if I needed more students, then I became a marketer. But then everything else would go out the window, As I got more students, I realized that we were losing students. So then I became the retention guy. Let's try to keep my students. What can I do to keep my students, right? And so I was constantly trying to plug all of the holes, but I'm not a good multitasker. I'm not good at doing everything all at once, right? Like my wife will tell you that, right? I can focus on one thing at a time, right? And so I had to recognize that I needed somebody to make the phone calls, to answer the phone, to answer my emails, to handle a lot of these things that I was very bad at. And so once I got Maria, like literally we went from like $10,000 a month to like $17,000 in like 1 month, right? Just because she was following up with people. She was actually making phone calls. She was answering the phone. She was setting appointments. If somebody came in, she would follow up with them and get them to sign up, right? She was organized and I was not organized. And right, I just wasn't. And so she was a huge compliment to the things that were not my strong suit. And so that was such a key piece of why I was successful with you guys too, is that I didn't have to do all the implementation, right? I could go to Maria and say, hey, here's all these cool ideas. Now go do them, right? And then I could do the ones that she couldn't do, and then she could do all the ones that could be done remotely. And so us as that team was just unbelievable. I mean, we were having right away, like right when we joined with you guys, like we started just skyrocketing the revenue immediately, right? Just way beyond what we ever thought was possible. And then I started getting my staff more involved, right? So Luke and David, they started expanding their role. They work full time now, where at the time they were probably doing 20 hours, 18 hours, a week. Now they're doing full time. They start selling memberships and things like that, right? They're doing things again that I started off doing, and now I'm like, okay, for this to be sustainable, I need other people to do it too. And so now I start training them on how to do some of the things that I have been doing, But I also recognize that my best position in this school is to continue to think about where are we going? What is the vision? What are we working on? Right. So I can fix things and make adjustments and focus on the goals and focus on the big picture of things. And if I'm in the trenches and doing all the day-to-day things, then I'm just not even good at that. That's not my strong suit. Right. And so I'm not even the best person for that job. So I had to kind of fire myself from that and get other people to do it, because that was, again, that awareness of like, okay, like other people are going to be better than I am.
Yeah, that's huge. As we're wrapping up, which this has been absolutely incredible. I'm so glad we were able to dig in and talk about mentorship and everything like that, and very excited for your book. Number one, do you have a timeline for when the book's coming out? Any updates around that yet?
I wanted to finish it now, but I'm not close yet. Yeah, I finished the rough draft. So the whole book is written in a sense, but as I've been going through and editing it, I realized that the editing is a lot harder than the writing. And so I'm hoping to get it out by the end of the year, but I want to make sure it's good before I put it out. And so as I'm going through the editing process, I'm just gotta, making sure I take my time with that so that I put out something good and not just something that's mediocre.
Well, we're excited for it. We're excited for the book, excited for your continued growth. I'm so proud and happy just to have been a part of some of the journey that you've been going through. I mean, it's just like when you have a student that you teach in your martial arts classes, right? And like, you're like, oh, wow, they landed that move. I showed them that move, right? Or it's like, where did they get? I didn't even think of that. That was amazing. I mean, there's been things where I'm like, oh, wow, that's really awesome how he's iterated on that. And so just very, very proud of you and all the things that you've been doing. And I know you're making a huge impact. So if somebody was trying to get in touch with you or something like that, what are your socials that they can, like your Facebook, I guess, maybe the easiest way?
Facebook would be at Cutting Edge Karate Krav, and then go to my website, cekaratekrav.com. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram's the same handle. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thanks very much for being here today. We sure enjoyed it.
Yes, I did too. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys too.
Thanks. All right. We'll see you guys next time on the Seven Figure Seekers podcast.